In today's episode, I bring you a topic that I haven't covered before, and that's infertility. And I'm excited to bring to you Angie Sanders' story of heartbreak as she tries to become a mom, something that she's wanted to do her whole life more than anything, and she fails. She gets pregnant 3 times, miscarries, and gets thrown into early menopause, leaving her unable to conceive a child. But through her strong desire and her persistence, she perseveres and she adopts a son. And then she takes her love of him and her desire to be the best parent and creates a movement on how to be a better parent and get certified. And she has a gift that I hope you can see of positivity. What I love about Angie's story is that, and this comes through when you listen to her, is that even though she was suffering in the midst of this heartache, she was still determined to become a mom. And she believed that that was her future. And that belief kept her going. And she took that grief and that heartache and she turned it into a lesson. And that lesson filled her with a future purpose. And if there's a struggle that you had in the past, I would love for you to think about that and think, was that meant to be fuel for your future? I think lessons lead us, if we're listening, to a place where we're meant to go. And so I love her continued perseverance to become a mother and how she's now using that experience to serve in a big way. So let's get to the interview now. Today's guest is Angie Sanders, and I think my biggest challenge today is going to be finding a topic we stick to, because Angie and I were just talking at our pre-interview, and we just met. We had met in a Facebook group, as I meet a lot of my guests, and I just loved her story that she wanted to share about being an infertile woman and finding adoption as her solution. And so I love that story. I have not done any podcast episode on that. And then here we were talking about, she's a cancer survivor. She homeschools her son, which is super interesting to a lot of people, especially now that a lot of people are doing that. She has been a casting director in the past for The Office. How cool is that? Because everybody loves The Office. So I'm just going to turn it over to Angie, and I'm going to let the conversation go wherever it may go. So welcome to Not Your Average Lives, Angie.
Thank you, Lori. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you. It's so great to meet you in person, kind of, sort of, online.
Yeah.
your lovely face. I'm happy to be here. Yes, my journey with infertility, it's one of those things that you hear about, and so many women don't feel it's comfortable to talk about it. I know there's a stigma attached to it. I know I always wanted to be a mom. I was a nanny in the daytime while I used to teach acting classes in the evening during my 20s. So I was around kids, and I taught acting classes to children, ages 5 to up to 17. So I loved kids, loved them. But having been a nanny, and I'm still super close to the family that I was a nanny with, I had 3 kids. My son was just the ring bearer and the oldest boy, the oldest young man, now his wedding. So there's very much family to me.
That's so neat that you've
Yeah,
stayed in touch. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're special for sure. I never had the illusions of grandeur that, being a mommy is this wonderful, beautiful thing, and this baby will love me no matter what. Though there's a lot of love involved, I knew it was also a lot of work and exhausting and tiring. Even the grandfather of the kids, now that I'm a mom, has asked me, so what's easier, handling 3 kids or being a mom of just 1? And I'm like, being a nanny full-time for the 3 kids, because I could go home, take a nice bath, relax, have time to myself, get a good night's sleep, but I loved every minute of it, and I learned so much. So when I finally found my husband, the man I knew I wanted to spend my life with and be the father of my children, I wasn't in a hurry to have kids. And you don't think about like the age thing. because I was healthy and young, and I felt so much younger than I was. I didn't think I'd have an issue with it, but I did. I had 3 miscarriages, and even though my husband Glenn and I discussed we wanted to adopt as well as have a biological child, even we were dating. So it was something that was always a part of our plan. I was surprised that when all of a sudden my body wasn't getting, I mean, it was getting pregnant, but it wasn't sustaining the pregnancy, how desperately I really did want it, and how physical it felt, how emotional it was. Um, and
And can you speak to, because we were talking about how we are proud of our ages.
absolutely,
Because, we think that we are great role models and,
yes.
we're not ashamed to say our age. So you're 54. So when did you start to try to have a child?
Let's see, 36, 7, 8, 9, 40, 40, I think of
Okay.
40, 40, yeah, 40.
So you kind of dedicated your life to your career
Yes.
and then when did you get married? Was it?
I'm trying to think, because we got married in 2001. I'm so bad at the math and the age. And we were even talking about, sometimes people ask me and I'm like, wait a minute, how old am I? Because it is just this number to me that I don't keep track. I know I was born at 65, so I try to always do the calculation there. And then we got married in 2001. And I remember it was just before my 36th birthday, I believe. And
Mhm.
then, um, yeah, we didn't start right away. So we were married through 6 or 7, 8 or 9. Okay, so maybe it was about maybe 39, 40. That was like about the year. We just kind of start trying, but then not really thinking it was going to happen right away. And you read about women getting pregnant in their 40s all the time, but what you don't read is the majority of those women probably did have maybe some form of infertility treatment or something. I did not want to go that route. I really wanted to try the natural. The first pregnancy was what's called a blighted ovum, which is the sac grows, but a baby never forms. So that was good news. Your body could get pregnant. But the fact that there wasn't really a baby to mourn and loss at that point, it was like, okay, yay, and I did acupuncture and um, like this massage therapy and herbs and all kinds of things. I did one time, we did go see a fertility specialist to make sure, if there was an issue on my husband's part, issue on my part. And it says they call it undiagnosed infertility, where they really can't find anything wrong unless at one point, if I had a miscarriage, they could do some kind of autopsy on the fetus, which is, I did not want to do that. So
Mhm.
I don't want to go through all the details, but the third miscarriage was really the worst because we got to 12 and a half weeks. We'd
Mm.
seen the heartbeat twice. Everything looks strong and sturdy. And because I'm a high risk pregnancy, they were doing my levels of my blood and all my FSH looked great. That even when I did have the miscarriage, my OBGYN, who was so sweet, just was crying with me and saying, I just don't know. And we were even going to tell our friends on Christmas Eve, a party that night, that I was pregnant because we waited, we felt substantial amount of time, and it happened Christmas Eve morning. So
Oh.
it was not fun, not pleasant. I mean, I'm grateful now for all the way everything turned out, but I'm not going to lie to you and say that it wasn't horrible. And I was probably for the first time in my life in despair. I knew I could just feel that was it. The third time, the whole 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. And it did set my body into early menopause. Like
Mm.
each pregnancy before, I got right back on track with my menstruation cycle, and this time nothing. And I was on the couch then having the just blues and depressed, and it was all the news was about Octomom, which this
Mm.
woman, remember,
Yes.
Nadia, I forgot her last name, had 8 kids, single mom. That's her journey in life, whatever. But I'm like, are you kidding me? And we laugh about it now because one of my favorite movies is Raising Arizona. I've always loved that movie, Raising Arizona. Dude, go get me a baby. You go get me. They got more than enough. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can so relate. I can't believe this is my life. And I didn't want to watch daytime television. I mean, every commercial is about a baby's bottom and their cute little diapers and running and mom doing the laundry for kids. And I
Of
couldn't
course, your brain is tuned into that because of where you are.
yeah, I just didn't want to. I remember I just started binging, I think, True Blood, because it was like, okay, vampires, and I can handle something different. Uh, and I remember even one time my friend was getting married and having her bridal shower. It was the first time I was going to get myself out of the house. It was, I think it was February. I mean, I was pretty much the month of January, the blur. And I get up to go to the mall. I've got myself get dressed, get ready, go. And I go and I drive. Oh, good karma. I got a parking spot right in front. How wonderful. Pull in and there's a sign that said, this spot is reserved for expectant moms only.
Oh
And
my
I was like,
goodness.
I flew bleep, bleep, bleep words. Are you kidding me? What the? I was supposed to be. And just sobbing, just sobbing. I called
Oh,
my
I'm so
husband.
sorry that
And
you know,
it's
you
okay.
look at those signs and you just think, dang, why didn't they have these when I was younger? When I was
I
pregnant.
know.
You don't
And
think about how that can draw an
no,
emotion to somebody who has lost a baby. I'll
so
never
I'm
look at those signs
always,
the same way again. Oh,
yeah, that's why even on Mother's Day, I'm always sensitive to other women who struggle and can't have a baby or are trying to, especially now, the journey got me to where I am. And I can't imagine, oh, I was emotional, being anyone else's mom but my son. I
yeah.
love him so much, and I'm so, so grateful to be his mom. It's the greatest honor of my life. So
So
it
yes,
is,
let's talk about Mason
yeah.
because one of the things we talked about before we got on the live call is that we often are get angry with the things that don't go the way we want them.
Yes.
But and I think that you've done a very good job of this is it's hard when you're going through it, of course, but when you look back, it's like life is giving you lessons
Absolutely.
and gifts in some way. Obviously, Mason came in the form of a big gift. So yeah, let's talk about how Mason came into your life
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and how that like changed your life
absolutely.
in
So in
many
so
ways.
many ways,
Yeah,
in so many ways.
with what you're
I
doing now.
Yes, I mean, the reason, I mean, I can laugh and make jokes about these things now, but I also want to stress that it was so important that I felt that loss, because you have to, I always say you have to feel it to heal it. I couldn't just like, okay, let's go. I can't just brush those kind of feelings, because then if I all of a sudden wait, okay, I'm going to adopt a baby and have a baby, I'm still dealing with a lot of pain and emotion. And I don't want a child to be some kind of way that I expect it to heal me or to fix a hole I have. I didn't want to come into it that way. So I was going through a lot. I mean, my mom was in a nursing home and she'd have heart problems and wasn't taking care of herself and broke her hip. So she passed away, I remember, right before Mother's Day in May, and I just wasn't ready yet after my miscarriage and losing my mom. And I knew I wanted to heal, and I knew I wasn't going to get right back to work. So what I wanted to do is I talked to someone really close, and that's when they said, you're still a maternal being. You still have all this love to give. You don't have to stop being maternal. You can mom in other ways. You've always done that through your whole life. That's what it is. And bring that so that energy will come into your life. Open that up. Don't close that off. And that was really huge to me. And I literally left that conversation, was driving home. There was a little puppy dog running across the street that got hit by a car and rolled over. I took that little doggy home. And that doggy's still here, our doggy today, and
Mhm.
knew that there were other ways I could still be maternal and loving. I said, okay, I don't want to go back and get a job in casting, because casting is all through knowing people and word of mouth. That I didn't want to start a job knowing that eventually we wanted to adopt it, because you don't know how quickly you can get the call. So what I did was, I had friends that needed a nanny again. And I said, I want to be outside. I don't want to be stuck in an office too. So I started babysitting for some friends, just part-time, but being with some kids. And other people were saying, well, isn't that really hard for you because of all you've been through? I said, no, it's actually really helpful, because I wanted to put that energy out as I could still be loving, maternal, and helpful. And I loved kids. So that's what I also want to just always address, is that we have to be very attuned, I think, to what we're feeling, be honest with ourselves. So I really enjoy doing that. And
And
then
what's right for you might not be right for the
absolutely,
next one. So don't put on what you think is going to
yes.
work for you on somebody else and let them navigate that.
100%,
Yeah.
100% agree, for sure, for sure. So we started the process. What you have to do, if anyone's interested in adoption, you need to, again, find out what's right for you, because there are different ways to go. There is
Mhm.
the international adoption, there is domestic adoption, and then there's foster to adopt. And you will have to know what's right for you. It's a very interesting journey. You have to take classes and seminars, and you can do them for free to find out what works for you. For us, domestic open adoption worked at the time, because with my husband's work and how far he could travel and take off of work, we didn't want to have to go somewhere, because you have to be in some countries for a long time and then come back. And then he took a leave of absence from work. We took a paternal, leave, medical
Mhm.
leave, whatever. So he was home for the first few months when Mason came to be with us. So we went and signed up with the adoption agency that we liked. You have to find one you like. There's so many different ones out there, and
Mhm.
take all the classes. And then you go through a home study process. And it's very interesting, like I say, and bizarre, because you have to fill out all these little boxes of what you're comfortable with. Are you open to twins, triplets? Are you open to any ethnicity? A child that might not be your own ethnicity, and how would you raise that child? And if you do mark those boxes, there's separate classes you have to take about that as well. If you're open to a special needs child or not. And then when you go through the home study, they ask a lot of intimate questions about your life, your past, how you were parented, how you're going to parent, your religious beliefs, your work, your money, you have to give your income. I mean, you have to,
Mm.
it's like more intense than doing your taxes, what I'm going to say, because there's someone in your face asking these questions. And so there was those feelings of a little bit of resentment and bringing up those pangs again of why is it so hard when just you read the news that, anyone can have a baby so quickly, or someone who doesn't want a child. I don't want to say doesn't want a child, but maybe wasn't planning a child and they got pregnant so easily and you couldn't. So you question these things. But I mean, I'm so, so grateful. We have open domestic adoption. So we were able to meet the mother, the birth mother. What open adoption means now is that the birth mother gets to, well, at that time, she's still the expectant mother before she actually has the child and then becomes the birth mother. The expectant mother gets to choose who she wants to parent her child. Now, there are different levels of that where you could continue relationships either through just emails or texts or pictures or communication or visits, depending on what the family all comes to agreement with. But
My
it's
cousin actually did 3 adoptions through an open adoption process in Texas
excellent. See,
where they were selected. Yeah.
it's better psychologically for the mother, the birth mother, and for the child to know as much information there, because back in the day when there was so much secrets and lies and shame and guilt attached to it, it was so unhealthy, and such despair and depression and shame. And now with the openness about it, just communicating about it, and there being, and those feelings, and stigma being erased, it's just healthier all around.
Yeah,
Um,
and the child doesn't have a cloak of, like, I wasn't wanted and I was rejected.
Exactly. You could answer their questions. The birth mother can see their child growing up through pictures of communication or a relationship, whatever their level is they choose, and feel somewhat more sure that her decision was the right decision. Uh, so instead of just wondering, because you can't think that a mother is going to have a child and then not parent it and not think about it every day on the birthday, every day with the Christmas, holidays, Mother Days. So I have such a special place in my heart of love for our birth mother, of course. I got
So
to
you
be
got Mason as an infant.
I got to be there in the room when he was born. We got to
That's
know her a whole 6 weeks before he was born and spend time with her. We still communicate with her. We just called her on Mother's Day. And Mason knows. I mean, that's the thing about when I was going through the process, I was going to say Mason knows he has 2 mommies, basically.
that's
His host
awesome.
mom, or his birth mom, as she's called, and me. I'm his mommy. She's, and and then we can answer all his questions. And if he has questions, he can ask her. So there's not his unknowing of his sense of what's going, feeling incomplete. Um, Even though most adoptees do still feel those feelings. And that's what I learned when I was waiting to be matched, because that's the hard part. We took us about, for us, it was just under a year. We were home study approved in January. We started September 3rd, which is the wedding anniversary. We put in our first application, and then we went to the home study, and you have to make a whole background check. And like I said, that whole huge process. And then we're approved in January, and then we're matched in November was when we met her. And then he was born in December, mid-December, even though he was due end of January, he came a month early.
So it was about exactly 2 years from when you had your last miscarriage?
Just about. It's funny because he was born in December, and then we thought
Mm.
about that too when we were holding him. His first Christmas, he was just like a week old, and we are like, do you
Oh,
remember,
wow.
how far we'd come full circle and had this beautiful baby in our arms. And again, it was such a roller coaster. And, your family tries to, and friends try to be as sensitive as they can, but they just don't know. And sometimes just asking, do you ever heard anything about the baby you're going to be? You're like, I would have told you, like, because sometimes just being asked that, you want to go, no, because it's hard to wait and you wonder why. And we were presented to two other birth moms who didn't choose us, because one didn't want a dog. She didn't like dogs. They scared her. And another one, I think she wanted him to already have a sibling, and we didn't have any. So you never know why or what, or a birth mother, why they choose or don't choose. But those were, of course, disappointing and more upset. So wanting to connect with other people who knew what it was like, who'd been through it, who could understand. So that's why I was searching for an in-person, like, support group. And they didn't exist. They used to have them, but you had to belong to that. Like, a lawyer might have had one, or a specific agency, and even calling them, oh, we used to have them, but people stopped coming. So
And this was before he was born or
we
after?
were waiting. While we were
While
waiting,
you were waiting. That's great.
we wanted to talk with people. So I'm like, all right,
Yes.
one doesn't
Yeah, I
exist.
think that's where you need a lot of the support.
Absolutely, because it's so unknown. And like I said, people don't know, every Mother's Day, every holiday, being invited to baby showers and birthday parties, the nieces and nephews. And though you love them and you're happy, of course, for your friends and family, it's still this pang, this twinge of, sadness.
Yeah, and I'm sure the being a part of a group where some people have gotten their babies, it's stories of hope too. So there's like you.
Absolutely. And you feel different. Even those in the group, when they come, in the group that we have, when they are in the waiting process, they still like to come and see the kids, because they know these are kids who came through adoption. So it does give them more hope. It's a different feeling than being with others who, biologically have theirs. It's a very unique situation, and I'm so grateful for all the people we met through it. And so I literally just went on, like, I think meetup.com, and posted about it. I made flyers. I put them in a gynecologist's office. I put flyers up at, like, Starbucks, and I called some um, infertility doctors, acupuncturists who specialize in, just getting the word out.
So instead
And
of casting for The Office or a show or a movie, you were out there casting for your group that you were going to
yeah,
build.
looking for
That's
others who needed support. And we had one mom at our adoption group, our first adoption group. And now we have over 300 members on the meetup page. And then we have a very private Facebook group that we have over 120, I think, on there, that are pretty active. I mean, others, some come and go because it's monthly. So sometimes they can come, sometimes they can't. And we have speakers that I get to come to our meetings from other adult adoptees. We have authors who've written books on adoption. We have as adoption specialists now who are therapists, because now there's adoption conferences, there's more organizations, there's more support that didn't exist, that just started in this last decade. So I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And then that's when I got my certification when my son was 2 as a parent educator, so I can learn more about trauma in children and brain development, and how we can best parent and be as empathetic and compassionate for them, and teach them emotional intelligence so they can better express themselves as well.
Yeah, I imagine that, and it sounds like you and your husband were kind of on board from before you started having infertility problems about adopting, but I can imagine that there are a lot of relationship hurdles as you're going through not being able to conceive, or being able to conceive but not being able to have a baby together, because a lot of men want to have a legacy.
Sure.
And so is there support as well for that? Just having
Absolutely.
other women to talk to about that?
Yeah, there's organizations just for infertility called Resolve, which is a great organization that dealing with infertility. And they have all the different, because there's surrogacy now, which is an option, which some people do.
Mhm.
We have, there's adoption, foster to adopt. We have single parents in our group. We have gay and lesbian couples in our group. We have those that some have biological children, some don't, some who've adopted internationally, some who are foster parents only and have them temporarily, and then or those who have them foster to adopt, have them in their home for a while, hoping to adopt them. and then they're reunited with their family. So we are dealing with all the different levels of adoption in our group. But yeah, I absolutely encourage people to get support. Resolve is usually for parents who have not become a parent yet, who have dealt with infertility, whether it's through infertility treatments. Now we did try one. I'm not going to, full disclosure, I decided to do 1 month of the turkey baster, which is the lower, it's not IVF, it's another initial. It's where I got shots for 1 month, and then it didn't take, and I just, I just don't want to do that if it's not meant to be.
So is it like artificial insemination? Is that
I think that might have been it. It's
That's more of a suction versus an insertion. So
well, it's because it's like a turkey baster in me. I put inside me.
Oh,
Of my husband. Okay. So it's like,
oh, yeah.
My husband's fine.
Well, yeah, turkey basting, I guess you squeeze and then you squirt and you squeeze and you squirt. So I'm thinking about the old days.
It's kind of like the old test tube. Like, I guess they see if it's viable and if it takes, and then it's put in me to see if it.
Okay, so the actual, what's the word? Union of the sperm and the egg are done in a test in outside the womb and then inserted. Okay.
I believe that. I believe that is what they did.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
And then you do more than one egg? Because I know that's.
Yeah. Oh yes, they always do more. Yes, they always do more. And then it didn't take. So, I'm assuming it's my body. We know my husband was checked and he was fine. So, it could have been older. I also know my grandmother had 6 miscarriages. My mother had 3. My doctors say it could just be like genetics. We don't know. And that's another thing. I could drive myself crazy. It wasn't meant to be. I have to tell you, once I became a mom, so many of those feelings, like seeing a pregnant woman, things like that, I did not get the pain I used to get. I used to watch TV shows and you'd see them with the, looking at the ultrasound and things like that. And I would get that sadness. I don't have those feelings of loss anymore.
So it wasn't about the physical caring of the child. It was just about being a mom.
I believe so. I'm not going to lie. For friends who I know, like people I know very closely, and like feeling their belly when they're the baby, growing, that's something I'll never ever get to experience. And I wish I could have. Mason and I have had conversations like this where, when he was really little, he was like obsessed with like belly buttons. I have a belly button. You want to show you his belly button and see yours? And he was really little. And he would always touch it. And he knew that I was not that's how we were able to tell him from very early on, even if he was crying when he was little, and I'm saying, I wonder if you're missing your birth mom. And she's probably missing you too. And that's okay. I always knew it was okay for him if you're feeling sad about that. And, I'm the mom who's going to raise you and will love you and take care of you. So even when he was little, and I'd say, my mommy's body was broken. It didn't work when he was little, and I couldn't grow a baby in my uterus, and so you couldn't grow there, and I wish he could. It would have been great if he could. So when he was little,
so he always has known that.
Absolutely.
So there wasn't a day where all of a sudden you had to sit him down and
no,
like
and that's what we really try to have be the new norm for adoptees, is especially in our group. That's another thing we talk about and share. How do you tell your child? I'm like, you just always should talk about it. The more you talk about it, the more comfortable you become. Because if we're uncomfortable with it or feel a little weird, or they're going to sense that and not want to talk about it. And the thing that for me, which is my goal as a mom, is I want my child to feel comfortable coming to me for anything, even his angry feelings, even his upset. Because especially when he's older and like a teenager, so often teenagers, they say, oh, they stopped talking to us, or they slam on the door, they don't want to talk to me. And I'm like, well, maybe that's because we taught them that, because we would say, don't talk to me like that, just because they're mad. And I'm like, as opposed to, okay, you're mad, you got something to say, let's hear what you have to say. And then let's calm down, let's take some deep breaths. We can still be mad, but talk in a respectful way. That's what I'm trying to teach my son, that he can have his emotions, he can be scared, he can be angry, he can be sad, he can cry if he wants to, that I'm always going to be here for, and I can handle it. Bring it to mom, I'm here for you. We have this thing where we open our, say, okay, there's the big bag, the complaint department is open, let's put the big complaints in. What are you so upset about right now? Let's get it out.
Love that.
Yeah, and there's ways I help him with his emotion. If he gets stuck in it, he can rip paper up, he can squish some stress balls, he can punch his big stuffed animal he has, or we have a tug of war, like with a blanket, so these are tools that I learned as a peaceful parent of how to teach him to be more emotionally intelligent, because I also know, and I've learned with adoptees, there is that level of maybe not feeling 100% complete, like I said, and unknowns, and always living in maybe a fantasy world, because we don't know about his birth father. We're told we do have some information, and when he wants to, we will learn. We will absolutely learn, and whatever he wants to learn. And he's been asked about what's adoption by some of his friends. Like, he'll just say, "Are you adopted? Are you adopted?" And they'll say no, and like, "What's that?" He goes, "It's kind of like a marriage. You're a family forever." When he was little, he used to say that, which I think is so beautiful. And now also through the adoption group, is these children who are the adopted children are growing up as friends, because they get together every month, and the kids just play outside, and we have childcare, and they run and laugh and splash in the summertime and just have a great time. We also have an annual Halloween party every year, which is massive. I think we had over like 75 people at our last party. It was so big. We had to have it at a park, but it was wonderful. And so the kids know each other, and they grow up feeling connected. They feel normalized, not like they're the only ones perhaps that were adopted in their school or sports group or something. And they have tools also of how to talk about it. Now we have a whole list of resources to share with them, of therapists, or like today there's a tween adoption group that he's going to be on a Zoom on, so
I
that's
love
another
that.
key
So
thing.
you mentioned
Okay.
homeschooling, and I think
Yeah,
some people might be interested in the homeschooling aspect,
sure.
especially in light of this pandemic, because I had said, "Oh, is your son out of school?" And you said, "No, I homeschool him." And I was just wondering, are you a year-round kind of school? You don't have summers off? It's just a constant learning
Well, we
environment?
are. I started homeschooling him in kindergarten. He did start at kindergarten. He went to a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful play-based, art-based preschool that we loved, and then we tried at a homeschool. He didn't get in any of the charters around here, and we weren't in love with which would have been his assigned public school. So we pulled him in kindergarten. I don't want to go into that because that was very traumatic. He had unfortunately, not a very nice kindergarten teacher, a
Oh,
traumatized.
no. Mine was a second grade teacher, was really mean.
Isn't that terrible? I mean,
Yeah, they're
you're
not
so
all
cute.
great, but there's some great ones, and my
Oh,
4th grade teacher made up for it all, so
absolutely. And again, I love teachers. I'm not against schooling. I'm not against teachers. I totally, again, you have to do what you have to do is right for you. I'm a firm believer in that. But it worked for us, and I didn't think I'd do it a full time. I thought, oh, I'll just get through kindergarten and we'll get him in another school and first grade. But we love the homeschooling community. We are attached to a charter school, so we meet every month with what's called an education facilitator. We turn in work samples of the work he's done, but it's not as high pressure. Like, that's the thing. A lot of people who are realizing, who are homeschooling, that it doesn't take 6 hours to do academics in a day. You get it done faster, and there's more time for joy, more times for fun. For us, it's
and
more,
and I would say also experiential learning, where you're,
yes,
like, going to, like, museums and learning
oh
versus
yes,
sitting in the
oh yes,
classroom and reading a book, which
yes.
I think is the retention
Because
is not as good.
yeah, it's more the comprehension of what you learn, because so often I know I remembered all my like periodic tables, but I don't remember them all now, but I remember getting the A on the test going, oh my gosh, I memorized them. And then bloop, out my brain, because there was for us, we a lot of hands-on learning, a lot of child-led. If he's interested in something, he loves video games, and so many parents, and I know I've had that fear of the video games and too much and how much is too much. I know, I feel it too, but he loves it. So I want to embrace that love, because he even says, Mommy, it's my passion. That's what he says. So how can I argue with that? So I have a friend that is in the video game world. So he interviewed him on Zoom, asked him all these great questions, and found out about what jobs there were. So it kind of like became like a little career day, like what jobs he could do. And when he's young, this gentleman had a first job is testing video games. He did a whole like report on the history of video game. I think his name is Bear Roberts, or Robert Bear. My son will tell you, the guy who invented the first video game. And so he wanted to learn about that. So we learned all about him.
Well, I know in Asia, it's like sports
Oh,
competition. They compete.
absolutely.
It's like a big deal. They have like major money involved where
He's
they
making
have a
our meal.
ring. It's like the WW, the Worldwide Wrestling, whatever. But
Oh, yeah.
instead, they're people playing video games. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes. So
So maybe he can make a lot of money for you.
maybe so. You never know. You never know. I mean, that's the thing is it's, I don't want him. I remember how I felt. I loved learning. And then when I got into, I think it was junior high, even like it depended on the teacher. You know, like we said, like there are amazing teachers that can inspire and uplift you. And if my son has a good teacher, he will follow them to the ends of the earth and ask questions and want to know. But if he has a teacher that just like sit down, be quiet, do this, don't do this, or shh, you know, then he's done. He doesn't care. You know, he's like, they're boring. They don't care about me. He even said in kindergarten, she cares more about the papers than me. It was way too much academics, way too much
Yeah.
worksheets
Yeah.
in kindergarten.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's just a different dynamic because teachers have like so many kids and they're trying to cater
absolutely.
to them all and everybody's
Oh my God.
different. And my daughter, I didn't even share this with you before in our pre-interview, but my youngest daughter, and I've talked about this in another episode, but we pulled her out of regular school right before junior year. And she just did not do well in a class of 30, but she
Mm-hmm.
did amazingly well in a class of like 7. And
Yeah.
so we found this kind of homeschool environment because
Right.
my ex-husband and I both worked and we weren't the homeschool kind of people. So, but it was really a healthy environment for her. And it was almost like a college atmosphere where she drove her car to this office building and it was 3 days a week, part days. And so she just started to love learning again when she had stopped loving learning. And she was in the gifted and talented program. So it wasn't like she had a learning disability. Her
Right.
learning disability was she was afraid to ask questions to the teacher.
Yep.
And so when she didn't understand something, she kind of sunk into her little shell
Yeah.
and she just felt like lost in that environment. So
I'm
it's,
so sorry
and
that.
then the school system, I think it's much better nowadays. She's 36 now. But the school system actually guilts you and
Oh, yeah.
threatens you.
Yeah.
So if you leave, she's going to have to repeat her year back she has to start back in the school system where she left. So in other words, if she took her junior year and got homeschooled, she couldn't come back as a senior to her high school.
Mm-hmm.
And she couldn't play any sports. And she was on the high school soccer team and the high school basketball team. And so, but it was important to her to kind of navigate her own path. And
Yeah.
it was important to me that I wanted her to love learning, just basic learning.
Yes.
And she was really
And
struggling.
that's
Yeah.
the key you just said, to love learning, because all of us remember when they're babies and they're toddlers, they would pick up a leaf and just look at it and like, what is this? They wanted to learn. They have like little sponges. And then all of a sudden when they're just sitting in rows or in little squares, whatever, like you say, the fear, the worry. I mean, my son would come home with this rash around his mouth. He would lick and bite his lips. He was so stressed out and would cry and have
Oh,
nightmares. And I'm like, what am I doing? There's got to be another way. And there was. But I mean, homeschooling is certainly grown. Like you say, there are co-ops. We go to this wonderful co-op. Same thing. You can pick different classes and they make it fun. Like there's a science class based on Harry Potter,
oh,
things. And there's a class about Minecraft where you will learn about all these kings and queens and explorers and pirates. And then you could build things at the last 20 minutes of the class after learning about them, something on Minecraft, realizing this is what kids love. Let's find what they love and find a way to teach them something,
yeah, I think I really truly think that the way society is today, and I believe that what we have with this pandemic with online learning is it's going to open a whole new area for parents to explore with their children, because I think we're going to build better kids that really learn earlier what
Yeah.
they love to do and what sparks them. And it's
Oh
all,
yeah. I
about
think we're
being sparked, finding those things early in life.
absolutely agree. I think we're going to find more people want to homeschool now. We're part of this huge homeschooling group that a lot of people, just started joining. We're like, come join us. And now, of course, it's all online, but asking questions. And some of them are loving it because they see, first of all, I know people have to work at home. A lot of people do, some don't, but they're getting to understand their kid better. They're getting more connected to their kid in a lot of ways. I know it's stressful also, but another great thing about it is that they're realizing how overloaded their kid was, because a lot of these schools were just sending home all the curriculum, having some Zoom class, and then still expected to do the homework.
Mm-hmm.
And I had so many friends calling me, coming to me, asking for advice as a homeschooling parent for so long, but also just crying in their closet, like, I can't do this, and this teacher wants me to do this. And they had kids, like 3 kids, one in elementary, junior high, and high school. And how can I tell them or show them how to do this? It was so overwhelming. And I'm like, look, they're already talking about leniency for rents and bills and, and taxes being postponed. You need leniency for your kid. You need leniency in all this workload, because that was one of the things that started the thing for us for homeschooling, is they were sending him home with homework in kindergarten. I opted out, said, oh, we're not going to do homework in kindergarten. And they were like, well, it's going to really hinder him. I'm like, it's not going to stop him from getting to university, if he doesn't do his homework in kindergarten. We want to come home and play after he's been at school for 6 hours, And so I always had that belief. Like, there's that great TED talk. It's all about basically play, how children need to play and how they learn. Ken Robinson, I believe his name is. That's it.
Well, you can always find it and send it to me, and I'll put it in the
Yes,
show notes.
I will,
so people
because
can watch it.
they do, like, even at a young age. I mean, even older, they come home. I mean, we learned fractions by making mud pies, There's so much that they can do. And like I said, I get it. Teachers are overloaded. They're underpaid. They're understaffed. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They're not getting the support they need. I feel for them. I do.
Yeah.
Because I know some days just trying to be with one kid, it's hard. But we can just, if we talk to them and ask them, what do they want to learn? And then connect with them about it. It can be so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we could talk forever because you're so interesting, and there's so many things that I have bullet points on from our pre-interview that we didn't get to.
Well, we'll
one of which is the fact that you're a cancer survivor. So I think maybe I have to have you back for another episode, but just to let the listeners know, they might be sitting on the edge of their seats. She is cancer-free, which is amazing.
Yes.
And she had a stage 1 diagnosis of uterine cancer. Ovarian cancer. Wow.
Mm.
I didn't realize it was ovarian.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. That's the thing, is it was an ovarian.
And
we found
cervical.
Found some in the, it was like, so I had to the whole hysterectomy.
Okay.
But if once they find any in the cervix, it didn't go to any of the lymph nodes, but then they say it's cervical. I guess where it started. That whole I'm so sorry. You think I should know my own cancers? Yes.
Yeah. Ovarian is scary, but I am so thankful for you and for Mason and for your husband that, you caught it early, and that,
thank you.
You don't need another lesson.
Right. And this thing you're talking about, though, that I didn't say, is what saved me was the fact that I went into that early menopause after my 3rd miscarriage, when I was in despair in a horrible place. Cut to, 10 years later, I had some spotting and bleeding, which I hadn't had in a decade. So I'm like, that's not right. I need to go see my doctor. And because I went to see my, my gynecologist so quickly, we were able to get it. And so you see, you never know. It's like, I know when we're in a place of sadness and despair or hardship, we have to heal and get through it, but know that we will get through it and not get stuck in it, I believe. And wonder, what will this teach me? How can I grow? And what's going to come now? And sometimes we wake up with Mason and we're like, I wonder what surprise will happen today. It's one of our things we say, I wonder what will happen. And then at the end of the day, we talk about all the surprises. Well, so-and-so called, or we did this, or we built that, or that didn't work. But because you never know, you just never know. So that's why I think we should never give up, because you never know what's around the next corner.
Yeah. I think the one thing we share is just this positive attitude. And I love how positive you are and how you've taken everything and turning it.
I mean, that's the thing, is I because people say, oh, don't you ever get sad? I'm like, absolutely. That's what I want to say. But that doesn't mean I'm not positive if I'm sad, because there are legitimate reasons we need to be sad. There are legitimate reasons we need to have anger, and anger is not a bad thing. Anger can make movements in the world happen and bring change for the better, because someone got mad about something, and said, this isn't right. We're going to change this. So that's the whole thing, is I've learned, again, later in life, though, is that it's okay to have our emotions, but just as long as we understand them and control them in a way and get through them and have them help us and know they're part of us.
Let them propel you.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck in them. But I love that.
I mean, certainly, like you say, being in the, quarantine and this pandemic has brought a whole roller coaster of emotions. And I say it's like we you know, when you like, if you get a call at 2 a.m. or someone's knocking at your door at 2 a.m, you're like, what? You jump out of bed and you're just this heightened energy of, and your heart's palpitating. It's kind of like we're in this state this whole last few months where we've been dealing with the pandemic, where what's going to happen next and all these unknowns. And we're in this constant state of fight, flight, or freeze. So I think that's why kids are more quicker to yell and scream or cry and have these big emotions, because they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to handle when there's 7 different emotions going on at once sometimes.
Yeah.
Alone adults don't know how to handle it sometimes. Oops.
So as we close, I have a question for you. And just so everybody knows, I will put in the show notes the names of the things and Angie's social media handles, so you guys can reach out if you would like to.
Yes,
But
any questions about adoption or anything, or please feel free to.
Okay, great. But I would love to know what the biggest surprise was that you never expected as a parent. I know it's on the spur of the moment, but
no, you know, I really didn't expect to have it open up my heart and mind so much. I mean, it really did. I always say he's my greatest teacher, because I wanted to change for the better. I wanted to become a better person for him. I also didn't know how the worry, like, oh, you know, the constant and the what ifs, and how I have to like keep that in check. Because so often as a parent, we can go from 0 to 60 of like, if he doesn't do this, he's going to end up like this, and as an adult, you know. So having to really keep myself in a balanced place and take care of myself so I can be a better parent, because I had no idea. It has changed me forever, every fiber of my being. I mean, like, just, but the capacity to love someone. I mean, they talk about it. Oh, it changed me. I never knew I could love someone. You hear people being interviewed, but you don't know it until you experience it. And it is, I'm gonna cry again. It's the greatest thing. I'm so honored.
Yeah, it's funny because that you say that, because I was young. I was 23. In today's standards, it's pretty young. When I had my first, and the whole time I worked, and the whole time, and I needed to work. My ex-husband was a police officer, so we didn't make a lot of money. And the whole time I was pregnant, I was like, yeah, I'm going to come back to work. Yeah, I'm going to come back to work. And I didn't have paternity or maternity leave then. And I was not getting paid for the time I was off. I had to save up the vacation I had, and I hadn't been at that job very long. Yeah. So I took 5 weeks off.
Wow.
That's all. And I found a babysitter in the newspaper, and I took her, mind you, the whole time I'm pregnant. Oh, I'm going to go back to work. It's fine. I'll take my baby. I'll hand her off and she'll be fine. Wow. And I handed that baby to that lady, and I thought, oh my God, this is not what I can do.
It's like a physical feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, I cannot do this. And thank God I had a sister who was home with her kids. She, I think at the time, was like a nursery school teacher, so she had a lot of time. And I called her and I said, can you watch Nikki for 2 weeks? Because I just quit my job.
Oh.
And I stayed home and watched. I took kids in so I could afford to stay home with my daughter, and then proceeded to have another one quickly, and so I could stay home, and then went back to work later when I could. But I was like, moms find ways to do things.
I know.
You will sacrifice whatever for your child. And I was like, went into creative mode. How can I be with my child? Because nobody can love her. Like, I mean, handing her over to somebody like was a stranger. I was like, the whole time I was pregnant, didn't even have a clue until you have that baby in your arms, and you're like, but it's really great to have your perspective, because I don't know what it's like to have an adopted child. And sometimes I think we think, well, are you going to love that baby as much if you didn't birth that baby?
And I don't know what it's like to have a biological child. So
that's right.
I can't imagine loving him any more than I do. I always say to him, there's an old song that I say this from, I love you more today than yesterday, but not as much as tomorrow. I don't know if you remember that old song.
I love you more today than yesterday. Yes.
And then And it's so true though, because something new I discover about him. But oh yeah, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying, because as someone who was a nanny, I remember that feeling of her handing me over to him. And I mean, I've been able to work part-time, when I became parent educator. I too thought I'd go back to work eventually, but I didn't. I'm grateful for my husband's job, and then working part-time. And then when we hired someone, but again, I did know her before. I don't think it could have been a stranger. But I remember driving away that first time with this car seat in the back of my thing going, oh my God, he's not in there. And like, oh, and I think I just went to run a few errands, and I came back and I was like, oh, or the first time you just don't understand the emotions when you become a parent. And my mom was a single mom to 2 kids, and we drove her crazy. God bless her. I mean, I get it now. You also understand a lot more your own parent, I think. You can have a lot more empathy for them.
Yeah. You're like, oh, they didn't really have their shit together. Because I don't as a parent,
No,
there's no book that I can look up and get the FAQs on
it's hard.
being a great parent. Yeah.
Well, there are some books I could actually recommend. I do know now there's a lot more. My mom read Spock. There was like Dr. Spock. Remember, he was a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I was lucky though. Both my parents were teachers, and so they understood kids a lot, but they were young and figuring it out like we all do as young parents.
And even though, like, that's the thing is, people come to me for advice now as a parent educator. I'm like, look, I'm not really a parent. I can't everyone's different. And I still lose it, but my son understands it more, because that's the thing is, Dan Siegel talks about our prefrontal cortex and, the fight, flight, or freeze, and he has a little hand pup. We say we flip our lids. Sometimes my son will come and say, Mommy, you're flipping your lid. Like if I'm running around in a spiral of like, I have to do this, and I did, oh gosh, oh great, oh the cat was vomiting, I threw it. I get in those moments where things drive us crazy. I always say being a parent is the most exhilarating but exhausting job you'll ever have.
Yeah. And you know what I always say is it's mentally tough too when they're younger, I think. And well, no, I'm sorry, backwards. Physically, it's really you physically.
Oh yeah.
And then once they get to be like Mason's age, it becomes the mental game.
Yeah.
So it's like it's attacking you on every angle.
I know. I always talking about how often I like bend over or squat. Don't use your back. Bend over, squat down to pick up things off the floor, or how many times I step on Legos and you can get injured.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a very demanding job, but it is the most rewarding as well. We get paid in hugs and kisses, and yet it's also thankless many days. It's just, but it's like I say, it's a surprise day. You never know. It's going to happen every day.
Yeah. Well, I will say having adult children who now have children, that's rewarding.
That's so funny. You just read my mind, because I was just going to say, I can't imagine being a grandma like that.
Yeah. It's so rewarding. And when Molly, who's my first grandchild, who's 9 now, I can't believe she's 9 and a half. When I was there, not for the actual birth, because I was like honored their like space, and we were in the hallway, and she called us in as soon as the baby was born. And I looked at that child and I had the same exact feeling as when Nikki was born. Mm-hmm. It is a feeling that you never get. I never thought I'd feel that feeling again. I mean, I remember being afraid with my second that I wouldn't love my second. And I hear this from moms a lot. I was so afraid I wouldn't love my second as much. And then as I remember Dr. Phil said this once, it's just like opening a new bank account. There's always, you're going to have enough bank accounts for how many kids you have. But it was like, this bank account that was open for the 3rd time. And now, I have 5 grandchildren. It's an amazing feeling. And then to see your child and that you did a pretty good job. I mean, my kids are better parents than I was. I think they're older. They waited to get married.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it as quickly. They were really ready to be parents. We were like, what? We're pregnant? Oh, how'd that happen? So that's really, really rewarding. So it's going to be an exciting time. Well, Mason is very lucky to have you as a mom. He drew a very good mom card. And thank you for being here. I think this is a great episode, and I think it's going to inspire people and know that there's hope.
Yeah. We don't give up. And always, sometimes it might not be what you imagine it to be, but it can even be greater and better than you imagine it to be.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Angie.
Thank you, Lori. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.